Since birth, I have been without sight. As I grew older, everything was vividly described to me, although I couldn't fully grasp the importance of sight, lacking a frame of reference for comparison. Our home was a single-floor ranch house, as Father would tell me. In my mind, I had a vision, albeit different from that of a sighted person. I possessed a spatial awareness, knowing the layout of my bedroom, bathroom, living room, and kitchen. Each wall had its distinct texture, whether intentionally or simply unnoticed by others. Tripping over was a rare occurrence, only happening if Father or one of our infrequent visitors misplaced something. It was typically the visitors who were responsible, and Father would raise his voice in frustration. Visits were infrequent and brief. Father instructed me not to engage with our guests, as it unsettled him. He worried when I perceived things he couldn't, relying on my ears or touch. Emma was the first visitor to breach this rule. She appeared kind-hearted, inquiring about my name and the reason behind my facial deformity. Her location in the living room was evident from the sound of her breaths, characterized by nasal congestion. Whenever Father caught a cold, he would breathe heavily through his mouth, unaccustomed to the sensation. Whenever people mentioned my face, I instinctively touched it, attempting to understand what made it so peculiar to them. When I asked if I could touch their faces in return, there was always a pause. I deduced that sighted individuals rarely engaged in such an act. Why would they need to? When I asked Emma if I could touch her face, she reluctantly consented. However, moments later, Father entered the room and questioned whom I was speaking to. I replied, "Nobody." He would always punish me whenever I mentioned them. It seemed to frighten him. Taking my arm, he would lead me away, causing me to lose balance and become disoriented. Once he finally set me down, my hands would frantically explore my surroundings until I could determine my location. Usually, it was my bedroom, although occasionally he left me outside, seemingly in the middle of nowhere. Those moments were the most terrifying. I would feel lost and scared. Father had mentioned the road in front of the house and explained that the sounds I heard were passing cars, capable of harming me upon contact. Those sounds became my only means of recognizing my surroundings. I would wait until I heard one, then use it as a guide to run back toward the safety of the house. That evening, I overheard Emma's whispers. She expressed fear. I whispered in response, but she couldn't hear me. I inquired about Emma with Father, but he evaded the topic. When I pressed him further, he remained silent. When I revealed that she had asked about my face, he inquired how I had responded. I told him that I wanted to touch her face. He laughed, though his mirth was tinged with unhappiness. I could discern the difference. Genuine laughter involves an open mouth, while forced laughter keeps the lips nearly closed. To me, the disparity was evident. It wasn't until I was older that Father provided an explanation. He divulged that we lived in a special place, connected to the other world. Sometimes, souls in pain who sought to reach the living would slip through. Due to my inability to see, I had an affinity for their presence, perceiving them when others couldn't. He instructed me to ignore them, as they would cling to me if I didn't. All they desired was to be alive again, he claimed. They were deceptive and dangerous, but he assured me that he knew how to handle them. However, if they were to become attached to me, he wouldn't be able to help. A few years later, Linda appeared before me. She expressed being lost and disoriented, desperately seeking assistance. Despite her pleas, I remained silent, fully aware of the consequences if I were to speak. "Did you talk to them?" Father inquired. Though I felt upset, I truthfully answered no. I wished I could help Linda. I understood the fear and anguish of being lost. Linda didn't whisper to me either. I ignored her, and she reciprocated. Father saved me, and I felt grateful. After Linda, I knew what needed to be done, so I took action. The spirits ceased troubling me for an extended period. That was until Ava appeared. Ava didn't afford me the opportunity to remain silent. I sat alone in the living room, listening to the television, when she pleaded, "Help! I need to find a way out." I remained mute. Surprised, she asked, "You can hear me, can't you?" "I'm not permitted to speak to you," I informed her. "Please," she begged. "I'm scared and lost. I want to see my daddy." Clutching the arms of the chair, I reiterated that I was not allowed. "He's dead," she stated. I chose not to respond. "Your father is dead," she repeated. I refused to fall for her words. Banging noises reverberated throughout the room. Objects began to levitate, and the shelves trembled. "Stop it!" I shouted, and it ceased. "Please help me leave," she pleaded. I refused to engage in conversation. I did the only thing I thought might help. I unlocked the front door, hoping she would run out and become lost, just as I had experienced. When I no longer heard from her, I locked the door once more and resumed my seat. I listened attentively, searching for any sign of her presence. Besides the sounds emanating from the television, silence enveloped the space. I despised the sensation of my heart racing. I became acutely aware of the ticking feeling, the rise and fall within my chest, as if it were on the brink of explosion. When I heard my father's voice, I screamed. "Son," he said, "I need your help. I think I'm dying." I obeyed his instructions. I refrained from speaking. If he were to die, he would never leave me. Instead, I darted outside into the open air, screaming for assistance. I continued shouting until my voice grew hoarse. The sounds of cars racing along the road in front of my house reached my ears. I shouted until someone responded. A woman. "What's wrong?" she inquired. I informed her that I believed my father was dying. She then asked about the condition of my face. I pleaded with her to help me, and she promised she would. I sat down on the grass and waited. Sometime later, the woman returned and asked if she could hold my hand. "I'm so sorry," she conveyed. Siren sounds filled the air, accompanied by the hurried footsteps of people. I inquired about the commotion. The woman assured me she was there for me. As the noise gradually subsided, a man posed a question. "I'm a paramedic," he informed me. "What happened to your face?" I assured him that I was fine. He inquired once more to confirm, and I reiterated my well-being. He then asked if he could touch my face, to which I consented. Moments later, I felt pressure being released from my forehead, and the air against my skin turned cold. It sounded as though he were peeling an orange. I visualized the image in my mind, worrying that he might expose my inner self. I screamed and questioned his actions. He reassured me that everything would be all right, while the woman squeezed my hand, encouraging me to be brave. I didn't know what I was experiencing. I felt a sharp pain in my head, similar to when you hit your shin against something hard, followed by a sensation I've come to recognize as brightness. It was excruciating. Tears started streaming down my face. "What happened to your eyes?" the paramedic asked. I replied that I was blind. He requested to examine them. The pain intensified as he inspected my eyes. "Do you know this person?" the man asked the woman who had helped me. She informed him that I had been screaming for help, and she had come to my aid, but we had never met before. "How long have you had this eye injury?" he inquired. I informed him that I had been blind since birth. He asked if I could see his fingers. I replied in the negative. Then he asked if I could open my eyes. I said I didn't understand what he meant. He asked if he could open them for me. I didn't respond. Suddenly I felt his fingers on my face, covered in something rubbery. The brightness returned, and I screamed. He attempted to calm me down, while the woman squeezed my hand. I had no idea what was happening. Indescribable sensations overwhelmed me. It was like nothing I had ever experienced before, intensified 100-fold and much more vivid. I continued screaming as a blurry figure came into view. "Just breathe, okay?" the paramedic reassured me. "Everything will be fine. When was the last time you saw?" As my heart rate began to slow and my breathing steadied, I became preoccupied with the overwhelming experience. It consumed me. I wanted to cry, and so I did. "How long has it been?" he asked again. "I've never seen anything before," I told him. The medical professionals instructed me to wear an eye mask for most of the day, only removing it at night initially to allow my eyes time to adjust. At the same time, I discovered that I had been placed in the care of my aunt and uncle, although I was unaware of it at first. They were shocked by what had happened to me and the fact that I had never attended school. The past few years have been a tumultuous journey. The doctors inform me that I may never have perfect vision, but I consider any improvement to be a blessing, and I am grateful for whatever I can see. I've only recently begun learning to read and write, so please forgive me if my English isn't the best. I am doing my best. I have been asking my aunt about my father, but all she tells me is that he passed away from a heart attack. When I inquired about what kind of man he was, She replied that he was her brother, and she will always love him, regardless. My uncle refuses to discuss him at all. Lately, I have been spending a lot of time on the computer and enjoying the internet. It's unbelievable that such a thing exists. After being lonely for so long, I can now talk to anyone I want, whenever I want, although I remain cautious. After all, how can I be certain if the person I'm speaking to is alive? No one seems to share my father's concerns about that. Today, while participating in a forum discussion about the spirit world, I was thrilled to find people whom I could relate to. Someone who was curious about my username sent me a link to an article on a true crime website. The article was about my father and mentioned me by name. They asked if I was the same person. According to the article, my mother had gone missing shortly after my birth. It revealed that I had been bound so that I couldn't see, and that my father had always desired a daughter. In the basement, they discovered 14 bodies. They mentioned that one person had managed to escape, a girl named Ava Roberts, who had alerted the police. Father's car was found parked behind the house. They speculated that he would carry his victims into the basement through the storm entrance and leave them there. Ava had managed to flee after agreeing to be his daughter, enduring 4 days of torture. She stabbed him with a knife he had left on the counter to butter toast. I didn't want to believe it, and I'm not sure I would have, if it weren't for the names of the victims, 2 of which stood out: Emma Johnson and Linda Mitchell. I had spoken to both of them in the living room. To this day, I wonder if I spoke to Emma and Linda before or after my father killed them.